Hi, AccuWeather.com meteorologist Joe Bastardi. Submitted for your consideration. Is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation responsible for much of the 0.6 Celsius warming that has occurred over the last century? The graph you see here is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation since 1900. The brown indicates the warm over here, and as you can see, since 1900 we have gone through two periods where the Pacific was warmer than normal. One cyclical period from 1940 to around 1978 where the Pacific was colder than normal. Now look what's going on now. We are heading into a colder period over here. We've just gotten into a reversing of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and I submit to you that if we look over the past 100 years here, if you have 70 of those years with the largest body of heat that there is to supply energy to the globe warmer than normal, which is the Pacific Ocean and the tropical Pacific, if 70 of the years are warm and 30 of the years are cold, you would expect that the atmosphere, the globe itself, would be a bit warmer, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that just be common sense? Now, the reason I'm doing this is because a lot of folks got very upset with me because I showed this graph on the O'Reilly factor a couple of weeks ago, and what they're upset about is this IPCC forecast for warming, and this is the consensus of their computer models, and what has happened over here. And this can be explained with natural variability. I understand that. That's fine. That's great. But the fact is, the forecast was saying up, 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 and nobody said back here that this natural variability of down was going to occur. Now, why would this be occurring? Well, it's very interesting to watch what's been going on with the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. It's starting to turn colder. And it started to turn colder. You see this shot down in 2000 over here. You see it warm up there. And if you notice, we started turning colder. We had this warm spell here with the El Nino. And then down it came again as it got colder again. We have a weak El Nino going on now, so chances are we're going to get a bit of a spike, and then it'll probably turn down again. Now let's look at this in relation to CO2. Now again, this is off some of the sites, the Science and Public Policy Institute site, for instance, and what happens is all sorts of crazy things start going on where, well, they believe this politically and these people believe this politically. Look, you can't manipulate the actual satellite data. I like the satellite data, not because it supports my argument, because at times it doesn't support my argument, but because of the fact that thermometers are very, very tough to continually calibrate, and the satellite is one system that we can look at all the time. But anyway, you can see the CO2 continuing up here, and yet we see that the temperature has very definitely had a downward trend here. So there is something going on there where there seems to be a disconnect. Now, whether this reconnects again, my point of the matter is that none of this was predicted before. Yes, maybe it is natural variability. But let's go back a little bit further, okay? Let's go back over the past 25, 30 years since the Pacific Decadal Oscillation turned warm again, as we saw on this chart right over here. You see that right in there, okay? So let's go back to, you can see all the El Ninos showing up here, and you see the temperature rise since 79, the lower tropospheric global temperatures coming up, 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 and then when things began to reverse, they start coming down, down, down. So apparently, I mean, there is some linkage here. In addition, there's another link that we're looking at, and I don't want to get too complex here. It's the global atmospheric angular momentum, okay? So when you're around the water cooler, you can talk about this. When the Pacific is warm, you can plainly see that the global atmospheric angular momentum, when we have a warm PDO, is positive. It has turned negative. So whether these linkages are the drivers or not, they have to be considered when one simply looks at what the temperature's been doing and correlates it with all these graphs that we're showing here. Is CO2 a factor? It might be. All right. I don't think it should be taken off the table. I don't think it should be, we should cut the research on it. But there are other things that are going on. You're lucky I don't have a lot of time here. I'd start getting into the solar cycles. But the point is, I want to make you aware of some of the other things out there. And as I always say, don't believe me, go look for yourself. And the other thing I always say, and I think it's the most important thing, you should enjoy the weather because it's the only weather you've got.